So, what Anna was saying, well, some of that's so true about regular experience. Basically, my role here today is to talk to you guys about what it's like to be called to children's ministry. So when I started out, I actually just felt called to ministry in general. And then eventually, it was revealed to me that children was kind of the area that God wanted me to focus on. So a lot of y'all here, you might be here and you might like have a call to ministry, but haven't really figured out exactly what area that's going to be. So we're just going to share a little bit today about kind of what children's ministry is like, and maybe if it's something that will interest you. So let's go ahead and get right into this. We're going to start with a few little quick trivia questions on, let me make sure that is where we are. Hold on. Bear with me and this mouse. Benji, what you think? I'm gonna use the old mouse. It'll be okay. All right. So who can tell me what that is right there? Anybody? Anna can tell me. Anna, what is that?
Yeah, it's a felt board.
So this is like a felt board. So like, okay, so I actually didn't even really grow up in church. Like I didn't even go to church till I was like a middle school or high schooler. When I would have been in church, for children's lessons, they would have used something like this. And basically, it's just a board. Sometimes they're this big. Sometimes they're a lot bigger. They have a bunch of biblical character pieces that are over here. And when they tell stories, they just stick them on the board, and they can change the story up. Okay, so that way, this is kind of like the first tool used in children's ministry to relay stories. All right, so y'all are going to have to get a little more active, because if there's an actual correct answer, you will win a fabulous prize. So just raise your hand if you know the answer, and I'll look and see and call on the first person who knows it. Next question is, what game is this? Hand up if you know it. Yes? Yeah, that's Fortnite. So this is, you might be like, Pastor Evan, watch Fortnite up in the children's ministry thing. So Fortnite's up there because, honestly, kids, you kind of have to learn, if you're going to be in children's ministry, kids love to talk about the things they do. It's good to be involved also with some of the things they do. And so for your amazing answer of Fortnite, you win 1 dozen Krispy Kreme donuts. If you could pass that back to her. That way you touch it and can feel it and realize you could possibly get Krispy Kreme too. So sometimes you have to relate to some of the things kids have going on in their lives. A lot of kids, even right now, this has been around for a little over a couple years. They're still very into Fortnite, so that's a pretty normal thing. All right. Who can tell me what app this is? Now, if you can do this, this would be pretty impressive. I know Benji can because he's in my class. Yep.
The children's Jesus Bible.
Very close. Very close. It's not Jesus Storybook Bible, but it's the YouVersion app for kids. All right, send one to her, send one to her. More donuts for you. All right, so this is honestly the best app you can use for like preschoolers. What happens is when kids get on this one, it tells the story. You can just hold it up. They push it where they can actually have it tell the story like to them, or they can read it themselves. It's got games and stuff. Just a very cool app. All right, we got 2 more. I think they get progressively harder. So this next one, oh yeah. So that's our scripture from the Bible that we use to talk about families and training kids. Can anybody tell me where that's from? Benji, you're on fire today. Benji's actually in my class. I actually teach here at Anderson Children's Ministry. I get to teach every couple of years. Where's Benji? Yeah, so it's Deuteronomy 6, and you just start cranking it out from there. So very good, Benji. You'll get maybe more than one at the end. Okay, since you're a pro. So this is Deuteronomy 6, great passage where it talks about parents training their kids. One of your foundational things in children's ministry, and obviously, hopefully, y'all will know this. What are these 3 things? Starting with this one. So kids actually use this now. Like my son just moved to middle school. He just got Instagram. Parents use this because we're old, and then if you're in the middle stages, you use Twitter, and that's kind of how it works. But these are tools that we have to use in children's ministry to either communicate with parents or just kids use these, and you kind of just know what they're doing. Now, when you're thinking about your calling in general, this is the one thing that we need to go, is how do you know you're called, and what is it about children's ministry? Come on in, ladies. What is it about children's ministry that really gets you fired up, okay? So for me, this is how I kind of realized my call to children's ministry. So initially, like I said, when I felt the call to ministry, I was, I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and so basically a lot of people came to my church here and there who were like seminary students. Most of the seminary students to me were very weird and different. Most ministerial types were weird and different, and I thought, that's nothing I think I ever want to do. But then as I got older and started getting more serious about my relationship with God, in college, about my junior year, God was telling me, Evan, I think my degree is actually a business degree from a state school. It's marketing and management. But my senior year, right before that, God was telling me, Evan, you need to do ministry. And I was like, I don't know about that. And so he put people in my path that helped me to get information from, to tell me how ministry works, that sort of thing. And so my senior year, going into that, I said, okay, if ministry's what you want me to do, I'll do it. And so I wasn't really sure. I didn't know if it was going to be church planning or student ministry just in general. And then within a couple years, what had happened was I have a brother who, it's only me and my brother from my mom and dad, but we're 16 years apart. So it's a huge age difference. And so basically one time I had to go to a kids camp with him. I had just got back from a youth camp, and when I went to this kids camp, I realized, wow, these kids, they really get things at a younger age. And so really God started telling me, Evan, this is who I think I want to use you to minister to. And I was like, I don't know, God, I don't even really like kids. Like, that's a terrible idea. Yeah, right? and so I thought, I don't know if this is going to work out. And so I said, well, let's try this. I said, I was a minister of college all the way down to kids at the time. And I said, well, it was a part-time job. So I said, over summer, I'll work a summer camp for kids. And then if that goes okay, then we'll just maybe keep going and see if it works out. So I worked every day from like 7 in the morning till like 4 with kids for a whole summer. And I loved it. And I was like, well, this didn't work out like I thought it would. I thought this would kind of just do this and that was it. But I loved working with the kids. My brother had really inspired me to go, this is important. And then at that point, I kind of knew, okay, I need to switch gears and do kids. So from that point forward, I knew I was supposed to minister mainly to children, and I've served mainly in roles like that since then. But you have to have something that really gets you fired up. And the thing that gets me fired up most about children's ministry is when I grew up, like I said, I didn't really go to church. So my family obviously wasn't one who we ever had conversations about God or anything like that. So what fires me up is I don't get excited just about the kids. I get excited about training parents to have these conversations with their kids and training parents to raise their kids in a Christian home. That's what gets me excited. And so in essence, the role that I serve in the church is children's minister, but part of that role is also ministering to their families as well. Now, there's going to be a few passages that are going to this is just in general. So let's have different people look these up. You can use your phone, your Bible, whatever you have on you. Who can look up Matthew 28 for me? Just raise your hand if you can look just that one up. That way I'm going to, okay, you take that one. Next one, Proverbs 11 and Proverbs 15. Who will do those two? Just raise your hand. All right, right here. And then next one, Matthew 6:33. Who would like to do those? Okay. And then in the back, someone, James 4, right here. James 4:17. So y'all look those up. And these are just some verses that, as I was trying to discern like what God wanted me to do, these were verses that helped me along the way and can help you just to think about your call and what God has in store. So the first was Matthew 28:18 through 20. Was that right here? Do you know it by heart?
I just read it.
I bet you do. So go ahead, tell me. Go ahead and read it for me. What's it say to everybody?
All right. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yeah, she did know. So that's the Great Commission. And honestly, if you feel called to ministry, that verse is probably going to come along the way and realize that that's a mandate not only for just us called as ministers or in the ministry, but that's every Christian, okay? That's like a call for every Christian. So that should kind of be where our basis of calling starts is God's told us. This was him talking to the disciples, but it's also him talking to us saying, you know what? We want to make disciples of everybody. So, okay, you say, okay, that's a good start. So now our verse is in Proverbs. Let's go ahead and 11:14. Let's start with that one.
Where there's no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety.
Okay, and do 15:22.
Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors they succeed.
All right. Both those verses, I love Proverbs. A great way to read Proverbs and to teach kids to read Proverbs, this is just a little side note for you, is tell them just read a chapter a day because Proverbs is 31 chapters. And so if they did whatever day of the month it was, they would read that one. It's usually easy to read. A kid can understand it. But it's also got some great wisdom. And these two verses talk a lot about counsel and seeking guidance. So when I felt called to ministry, I wasn't sure. So I had 3 or 4 important people in my life who I would always talk to about What's the next step? How did you end up doing this? It was people who had done that, and I said, well, how did you get started? What did you do? It's important that if you feel called to ministry, you have some mentors along the way, people who you can trust and ask anything you want, and they're going to answer you with anything they want. That way you know what you're getting into. Because the worst is getting into ministry if you have no idea what it really entails, because you're going to be in for quite a rude awakening. So get some counsel from some people who have been there before. All right, Matthew 6:33. Where was that one? Go ahead.
But seek ye first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you.
All right, so basically, when you're going through this journey of your call, it's important to just stay focused on Him. Because what's going to happen is you realize, and you get a call from Him, and He's saying, okay, you need to do ministry, and then you're going to get pulled in other ways, because that's just normally how the world works. But you need to keep your focus on Him, otherwise it's going to be very hard to discern the call. Okay, so stay focused. And then James 4:17.
If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them.
Right, so if we feel called and we feel like God's really calling us to ministry, and then we say, I don't think so, then basically what that verse is saying is that's sin. Like you're sinning because you're not doing what God wants you to do. And so that makes it a lot harder when you think of it in those terms, okay? But the bottom line is He probably has called a lot of us in this room to do this, and He wants us to do this. And the only thing holding us back, honestly, the only thing that was holding me back when I didn't do it was me. And I was going, I don't know if I'm ready, I don't know if I'm equipped, because I actually became a minister before I had any biblical training whatsoever. So I went to a state school, had a state degree. I didn't have any Bible classes, but I was already, I had a job in ministry before I went to any ministry school, any seminary, anything like that, okay? But God used me, and He wanted to use me, and that was how it worked. So this best advice ever received part down here, for me, the best advice I ever received from someone talking to me about it was, they said, Evan, it's like this. They said, if you can do anything else, and you think that this isn't it, then do anything else other than ministry. Because the only people that are going to be okay in ministry are people who are really called to do it. And if you're not, it's not going to work out. He said, so if you can do anything else, do anything else. And I was like, okay. And I knew I could do some other things, but I knew that wasn't what I was supposed to do. So the best advice is stay focused. If you know you're supposed to do it, go for it. It's going to be okay. Okay, God's going to equip you with people and tools and things like that. But make sure it's really there. Now, so one thing I thought would be fun, and just so you know, I'm going to leave a few minutes for questions at the end, so if you have some questions, be thinking of what they are, because this is like an opportunity where I am a children's minister. I will divulge any information you want to know about children's ministry to you. Any question you have, totally fine by any of y'all, okay? So just in general, what do you think a children's minister does? Let's throw out a few ideas and things, and we're going to talk about some of these things. So what do you think? Give me one thing that a children's minister does.
Pastors to kids.
Okay, so pastors' kids. Good start. Excellent. You have to do that if you're a children's minister. No doubt. There are children involved, and you have to pastor these kids or lead them. Good. What else? Like this is like job during the week, what actually happens behind the scenes. What do you think goes on? Benji, give me one. Oh, yeah, you have to have some snacks. Benji, you're so right, especially those preschoolers. You have to have some snacks. Planning. We'll do snacks, and we'll just say plan. Okay, what else you think? Yeah, helpers and what's going to entertain them because they're young. It's like you said, they need. Right now we're in a society where it's a tech society. So if there's no entertainment value, then these kids are going to be like, well, this guy read a Bible, I fell asleep, and that's what it's going to be. So we'll just call that entertainment. Because that is, and honestly, I mean, I know in a way you hate that using that word, but in a way that word is 100% true. So there needs to be value to what you do in children's ministry, and it needs to be something that keeps them wanting to come back for more. Otherwise, what are they doing? They're miserable at church, and that's not what we want to do as children's ministers. Awesome. Anything else?
Parents, what you're doing for your children.
Yep. Parents communicate, and you want to communicate not only what you're doing with your kids, but when it's going to happen, things like that, and the biblical stuff you're teaching their kids. That way they know and they can talk about it at home. Absolutely. Good one. Discipline. How do you discipline? Right. Discipline.
At least know how to act in the house of,
Uh-huh. So basically what you're talking about, and I can already tell your background, you have some kids who may not be normally in the house of the Lord, because the fact that you use that terminology, I have different areas that I minister in, and some are areas where we have neighborhoods of kids who they don't go to church and they don't know how to act in church, and honestly, I want a kid to be comfortable acting just like they are, but there's certain rules like bouncing stuff off a wall that we probably don't need to do in church, and some churches will even go as far as don't wear a hat in church, don't do this. This really depends on the church you're in, okay? But the thing is, they need to know just normal discipline in this is when we want to act Christ-like, this is what it looks like, because they don't see that at home. These kids that come in, they don't see that at home. So you're it, and so you're going against the grain because you're teaching them 1 or 2 hours a week, and at home the other zillion hours they're seeing non-Christ-like behavior. So big challenge. But that doesn't mean we don't tell them what Christ-like behavior looks like. That means we instruct them on how to do that. Great points. Answer questions. Good one. And kids, they have some questions, let me tell you. One thing I love to do every now and then, like every 3 to 6 months, I'll have a thing where they can ask any question they want about God, Bible, whatever, and I collect them all, and then I answer them or get our staff to answer them over the next few weeks. I spread them out. That way it's not me always answering them, because they got lots of good questions. And the older the kids and the more they really get in God's Word, the more they really ask some questions that require even me to come and do a little more research and make sure that we get all this right and they understand. So, it's good. All right. Anything else?
Counseling time.
Okay. Tell me more specifically what you mean by counseling time.
Well,
What type of counseling?
questions that they may have about salvation.
Okay, we'll do. So counsel salvations, we'll call that. So the average age for a kid to make a decision, just standard, is 8 years old, okay? But honestly, that's a kid who, the majority of the time, an 8-year-old is a kid who grew up in church, and they've been around, and they hear it a lot, Usually about 8's kind of when that kid's going to start to say, I get it, what is it? But this can happen, obviously, at any age. It could happen at 5, it could happen at 95. It just depends on when Holy Spirit, God, everything, all the pieces come together. It's not for us to decide. We just present and then wait. But obviously, sometime, if you're a children's minister, it's going to be spent talking to kids about Christ, and what that means, okay? So I'm going to pull a list up, and this is a list that basically is a lot of the things that we do. And some of it you wouldn't think we'd ever have to do this, but it's just part of the job. All right. So the first thing that I do as a children's minister is pray. I pray for my leaders. I pray for, and I trust my leaders to pray for my kids. And we have this amazing group of senior adult ladies at my church. And every Sunday they pray for every kid by name in every room, which is awesome. So, if that's something, if you could get your church to do that, it's huge, because I know every kid has been prayed for. I can tell a difference because I've been in churches where it doesn't work like that. And so I pray for leaders. I get leaders to pray for kids. I pray for kids. So prayer is one of the keys. And the way I pray for my leaders is I have a big notebook. And where I am, I have about 100 volunteers that kind of help me out with different things at different parts of the week. So I usually try and do about 20 to 25 a day. I'll either email or text them and just check on how they're doing. If it's someone who doesn't email and text, I have to give them a call. And I have a handful of those, because obviously in the preschool area I have a lot of senior adults, and some of them, they don't text, and so I have to actually call them on the phone, and that's okay because it's only a handful. But you let them know how much you're praying for them. They love that. Next, you want to train your leaders. This is something that we can do lots of different ways, but it's hard to train them all at one time. So the way you can do that is you can either do videos and send them a copy of the video, or just send them a little typed email. Something like that. So you want to make sure you're always training your leaders. You have to be planning lessons. Wherever you are, I promise you're either going to be teaching something each week, unless you're just kind of at a church where it's really big and you just oversee everything, then you might not be necessarily teaching every week. But most of the time, in these situations, you're going to be planning a lesson every week, sometimes more than one lesson a week, sometimes 3 to 4 lessons a week. So you got to have time to do that. So you got to have time to research, read. And research and read is basically you want to make sure that you're not only doing all these things, but you want to stay ahead of the curve, because when parents come to me, they think I'm the expert in the children's area. I'm not like the I do this all the time, and I have more time to read stuff than they do, so I try and read stuff that's going to help me to talk with parents about stuff they might be dealing with. Plan events. Depending on the type of church you're in, some are very event-driven, and some aren't as event-driven. So but you're going to be the one that's doing that if it comes down to something that they're going to do. So you need to figure out how to plan events. You need to be able to plan worship experiences. That's how the kids worship. Most places now have some sort of children's church. Where I am, there's one for the settings I've been in. I've been in some where we have a children's church for kindergarten, first and second. We have a separate church for third, fourth, fifth. We have 4 and 5-year-old church. We have first through fifth grade church. These are all different settings. So most likely, someone's got to plan this whole worship experience. A lot of them have music. A lot of them have live drama. A lot of them have anything you could imagine, game time, and you just have to make sure someone's planning all that. You have to make sure you're reaching out to visitors, checking in on them, making sure that what was their church experience like. Find out from them what they like, didn't like. Figure out where they're at. Is this church going to be a fit for them? Counsel kids, that's in there. So we have to figure out a time and how we're going to do that. Some do different things. I've found over the years one of the easiest, not easiest, but the best way to make sure this happens, I offer like a new Christian class every 3 months now. And it's a 2-week class that the parents come to with the kids. And we go through everything from they started asking questions about what it means to be a Christian to after they become a Christian, and now they're learning Scripture, understanding what Lord's Supper is, understanding why they get baptized, to all those things, okay? And so we cover all that in a 2-week class. That way, if a kid's kind of on the fence or they're making a decision, I tell them, just come to this class first and check it out. And kids who have made a decision already, they still come to the class just to make sure they understand everything. And usually what will happen is if they don't come to the class, I just take the time out and talk to that kid in my office. And so social media, that's a new way, obviously not new anymore, but that's a way that I keep in contact with parents. I use that more than anything else, to be honest. If I post something on there, more of my parents will read that than they'll read an email from me, because that's their mode of communication where I'm at now. It's not like that everywhere, but that's just something that I would suggest you learn how to use if you're going to do children's ministry. Okay? All right. So how do you prepare to become a children's minister? Like, what can you do to start getting prepared? These are things that maybe you can do. 1, make sure you're praying about your calling. Praying about, God, is this it? Is this the area? Are we sure? Next, take a spiritual gifts test. So what that'll help you do is figure out kind of your strengths and weaknesses. So like for me, my strengths are, like if I take a spiritual gifts test, pastoring, awesome. Administration, not bad. Shepherding, absolutely. But like when it really comes to like organization and like planning and stuff like that, like there's really not in there, and it acts like I'm okay, but I'm actually awful in that area. Like my desk is like stacks of stuff everywhere, and like, I mean, that's actually kind of typical for someone that does what I do. But like that's not me. So I need to realize that like if I'm going to do this, I need to make sure I need to either get better at this or surround myself with other leaders who know how to do this, and that way they take up the slack where I'm a little short. So taking a gifts test, though, at least lets you know your spiritual gifts and kind of where you think God might need to mold and shape you a little more to do this, okay? This one is probably the most important one, is serving in a children's area. So like as you start to serve in an area, you'll start to realize, like I said, at first I really didn't like kids at all. Like I was like, kids, they're a little crazy. I don't like them. I like the older students. And now I'm the 100% opposite. Like once they get to like middle school, I'm like, now you're going to have to go deal with our our youth minister, because that's just way too much drama at this point. I like to go to bed at an early hour, not a late hour like the older folks, middle school and high school like to do. But it wasn't until I served that I started realizing and seeing that was where God wanted me. And like I said, I served in a summer camp. I served on like field trips. I served in some school roles. Substitute taught a little bit, like in local area schools, and doing those things helped me realize, oh, there's a lot to this. And then, of course, don't be afraid to take the next step, okay? So that's where it gets a little nervous, and you're like, I'm not sure, is this it? Once you start serving, you'll have a general idea of if you want to do this or not, okay? All right. So that's everything technically in my presentation. So now what I want to do is, if y'all had any questions or just things that you thought about children's ministry, I want to have a few minutes just to answer them and talk a little bit about you guys and help you out. So maybe stuff you've been thinking. Benji, what you got?
If someone asks a question, can you please state it for the recording?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Anything. This is it. Like, go for it. Don't be bashful.
Do you Uniform, some type of.
Yeah, some type of official curriculum, and how do you figure out what curriculum you would use and that sort of thing? Yeah, so that's a great question about picking the curriculum to use, because here's the thing, some curriculum costs a lot of money. Some curriculum is free, and some you just write your own curriculum. Which is you just figure out what to do. Some curriculum is always good, and it depends on the setting. Like is your setting like are you in church service and they're kind of in another area, or do y'all do Bible study time and then church, or what's the setting?
No, they have classrooms. We have classrooms.
Uh-huh.
So.
Yeah, they're in church while the adults are in church.
Okay, so adults are in church, and they're in a classroom setting, like you got all your 8 to 12-year-olds in there.
Right.
All right, so at that point, you've got to decide, do I want to do kids worship type thing, or do I want to do more sit-down type thing? You know, like sit-down type thing is more like a Sunday school class where, like, you're teaching them a lesson, they got some activities, they got some crafts, things like that. And both of them, I'd say, are good. I'd say more structure is better than no structure, always. And so then it's a matter of figuring out, like, if the church can afford it, it's figuring out which one you want to do. If the church can't afford it, then, like our church, we rotate all our stuff to Saluda Association. They rotate it right to other churches who could use it. It's all dated, but it's not dated with anything that really has to do with the dates. You see what I'm saying? Like when I have a book, it's got a book of stuff, but it don't matter when you do it. So really, I'd say you just got to decide if you want to do more of the sit-down traditional type format or worship time. Because once you start saying in a traditional format, you don't need 20 leaders in that room. You only need 2 leaders in that room. Once you start saying, okay, we want a worship time, which is obviously, I think, a little more engaging, because you said for entertainment value, that's going to be a little better. You need more people, because every person that does a different thing, you need that extra volunteer. So I'd say start with smaller, with like the Sunday school type curriculum setting where they're doing a craft, doing activities, doing games. You still have all those. You just don't have like song stuff, and you can still do songs and stuff in there. I've seen it done, and then move your way to the other. That would be my recommendation. Great question. What else? What about in the back, this youth section? Like, have y'all thought, like, do y'all think like children's ministry crazy? Do y'all think, what do y'all think? Anything from the youth in the back?
Personally, like, my mom works she does children's ministry at my church.
Uh-huh.
Like, seeing what they do and stuff, like, I feel like God is calling me to be a part of that. Because, like, I do nursery on Sundays and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I'm lifting kids some, but I want to be more involved as a parent.
Right. So that's great. So, like, does your church automatically do something to involve students in those areas, or no?
See, I got voluntold to be.
Yeah. But you see, your mom is a leader. Like, are there any other youth that get voluntold, or just you?
Just me.
Right. So here's the thing. A lot of churches don't necessarily have an organized system to get people plugged back in. So, like, where I am now, what we do is, so, like, they go to 5th grade, and once they're in 6th grade, like, it's a whole other area. You go to big church, you do normal stuff, Sunday school, big church, whatever. But what we do is I rotate those kids that want to help back in. Like, if kids like, I think I might want to do something like that, we rotate them in to kids worship, where they come and help in there. We rotate them into the sound booth if they think media is the area they want to serve in. The bottom line is these kids, like, some of our kids serve in our orchestra, like our church does orchestra, and so, like, some of the kids play like a cello or like because they take it in school already, and they're like, we might want to do this. So, but a lot of churches never even think to use a youth or a kid in some of these areas, and really they wouldn't necessarily be opposed. We've just never done it that way. So I encourage all y'all when you leave here to think, okay, how do we include the little kids a little bit older helping out in this? Because that's how you're going to help to figure out, is this something I really want to do? If you don't ever do that till much later, you wasted a bunch of years when you could have been figuring it out. So don't be afraid if that's y'all going back and telling your leaders, hey, I want to help out. Because see, for me, it was a leader that told me when I was a little older than y'all, Evan, don't you want to come help out? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I kind of like this and kind of want to do it. And if he'd have never sought me out and asked me those questions, I don't know that I'd be in ministry, because he was the one who pushed me. And just like y'all might be feeling the push, you need to go to your leaders and say, I think I might be feeling a push. Can I go help out in the area? When a kid's come up and told me, Pastor Evan, do you think I could help you? Unless the kid is a total maniac, do I go, I don't think so. Like, I go, well, tell me what you think you want to do, and tell me how do you think that would work, and how often do you want to do it? And then I just communicate with the parents and make sure it's not a kid that's just trying to get out of big church and have fun church. And once we get past that hurdle, I have a lot of kids that serve once a month, some twice, some two out of 4, and it just depends on what they are. But that's how you figure it out. So that's good. Good. I'm glad to hear that, even though you were forced in. That's okay. Yeah.
So what are methods that you use personally for like students who aren't involved in the church? Like, what ways do you get them involved?
So, like, every now and then we have a handful of kids who, like, they come with a friend. Like, they come with their buddy. They kind of like what's going on. They at least have a friend there, usually. Usually you don't have just a... You talking about that situation or, like, total outsider that just...
No, that situation.
Yeah.
Just come and just come.
So we have students like that, and the problem is you don't have any parents. So basically, I've got to enlist the parent of the friend to be the parent. Sometimes it's me. Sometimes I have to get another adult to lock into this kid and say, I need you to, like, be the mentor for this kid. Like, and I need you to grab that kid's parents and get them in here, So sometimes it's having to match them with a parent that you know the parents, you know who's going to be responsible, and you know how it's going to work. So I grab my most responsible parents and say, you think you could have an extra kid like for today? You think they could sit with you in church? You think you could take? And my parents would even do things like take them to lunch after church, and some of them are great. And once you do that a few times with a kid, now that kid's bought in, and eventually what you see is that kid goes home and he's telling his parents, man, you got to get on board, and then eventually you may get a parent or two, hopefully. A church that we work with in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is a place we go, and they do a ministry there over the summer just for a week, but they see basically what they saw was a lot of kids who would come to this, but then the parents weren't there. So their goal was try and get these parents in, and they would feed me. They would do meals at night. So it's doing some things that you think could get that parent in, because that parent's not just going to come to normal stuff. No. So you got to think out the box on, like, what, like, when we go on mission trips to even like Peru and places like that, it's a totally different culture. So, like, the parents are there hanging out, but they don't want anything to do with it. So you have to literally figure out something that you're going to have where you got these kids and they're doing something, and then you're going to the parent, and there's some of your parents grabbing that parent and talking to them. That's how you can get them in, but that's the only way, because you want to get an overall family event. I don't care what it is, something they'll come to. Things they've done is they've done meals. They've done like a game night where, like, they get one jumper house or something for kids, And so when you do that, all of a sudden now the parents are there, and this is your, like, jump point where you have to get that parent who that's an awesome parent to lock in with that other parent and just give it all you got to try and get them to start coming.
And then that'd be awesome to get them there,
Right.
They can learn about the Word of God too, because
Right. The biggest drawbacks people have is people who aren't in churches. Church is judgmental. Church, I don't know anything about that. It's weird. Those people aren't normal. But if they met a person who they felt like was very similar to them, who really genuinely loved and reached out to them, all those walls would fall in seconds because they start to feel linked in. But it's Holy Spirit. Gotta pray. Gotta get Holy Spirit, and gotta hope that it just links in the right spot.
What you suggest, so that we can not just be like teachers, but be more like, feel more like a family to these kids? Like, would you suggest, like, what type of fellowship ideas would you suggest, like field trips? Or,
so the biggest key to go from, like, friend to family, is I usually have people fill out a form in the very beginning, and it's like a things you like sheet, and this thing, and you can use this in any setting. I actually do it with the class Benji's in. Like, I have his information of what he likes to eat, like his snacks, his things, what he watches on TV, what sports do you like to do, what I encourage all my teachers to do is make sure they go to at least one of that kid's things. Like I went to a thing this past week, was a kid was in a drama in Wren Park over here, and so we went and watched that. But so first is you get them going to things that the kid's involved in. But as far as like a fellowship idea, the ones I've seen that are like good, park, night at the park, where you just go, I'll meet at the park. You can do it at any park. I don't care what park it is. Kids are going to come to that, and parents are going to come to that because they got to get them to the park. Some will walk to the park, but a night at the park where, like, you don't have to have. That's one that's low money, low anything. You just show up. Like, I was at a church one time. We just show up with some sports equipment, go for it. You get sports equipment out, every kid's in. That's how I started coming to church, with sports equipment. I hated church, and then a guy was like, hey, we play football. I was like, yeah, right. And then they did play football, and then from then I started coming to church. And so, but that's you want ones like that. You want the meal ones are good, swimming one is good. We would do a community pool, like a literal community pool, in a city, and we would rent the pool, and then pretty much anyone who wanted to come could come. We would do, let's see. Those all are good interaction, because you have to interact, you know what I mean? Because if you do a movie on a screen outside, nobody talks.
Right.
So that's not going to be, you might get them there, but you really didn't get very far.
You want them to feel and be comfortable.
Right.
Just like how my child comfortable, you want that child to feel the same way that they can always come to me.
Yeah. And so that's where, when you invest the time in the kid, they want to come to you. Then they're on board. Because once they know you really know about them and you actually care and you listen, it doesn't take much for kids, to be honest. Because a lot of kids, they don't have, if they're getting that from you, they might not be getting that at home. And it's sad, but that's just how it is. Good questions. Anything else about children's ministry in general, that y'all are just how does this work? Or, yep.
Have you said anything about fundraising? Because sometimes it comes with the area.
Yeah, a lot of times so you're going to end up in a setting where you either. Some churches don't do any fundraising. Some churches do all fundraising. And then some churches are somewhere in the middle. So fundraising ideas, honestly, some of the best ones that I've seen are ones where you don't necessarily have a ticket price or a ticket thing. You just do a donation. Car washes with donations work better than car washes where you charge $3 a car, because people donate more than they actually charge. And so same thing with a meal. If you do a meal, you get spaghetti or baked potato meal, and those type of meals that really aren't expensive, and you just do a donate thing. But you definitely, if you're going to end up doing some of these other things, you have to have money to do them, and a lot of churches don't have a budget to do them, so that's going to have to come from somewhere, or finding someone in the church who's willing to just sponsor the event. That happens sometimes too, because sometimes you might have one or two people that do have money that have kids that they go, yeah, we want other kids to be able to do this. And I've seen a few situations where people have said, I want so-and-so to go to camp, I'll just pay for 3 camps. And I'm like, okay, sounds great, but that's the nature of wherever you're going to be in, but that does go hand in hand with it. Awesome.
How do you feel about, with game time? Do you feel like it always has to be structured, or can it just be sometimes free time?
Okay, so you'll hear a lot of different things on this. I feel like it can be unstructured to an extent. Organized chaos is more of kind of what needs to happen. And another thing is, most games that I try and do in general, if I'm doing them in a setting of that, I try and have some spiritual application to the game. Is it okay if you don't have one? Absolutely. The question of does it have to be structured or unstructured? It can go either way, but it all depends on the time frame. For instance, I have kids that come to my kids' church. They finish Sunday school at 10:15, and I usually have them until almost 12. Well, that's an hour and 45 minutes, and I've got a room of 80 first to fifth graders. Okay, so to think I'm going to have a structured for an hour and 45 minutes is a little. Not so much. So usually what I do is I'll play some Christian videos for about 15 or 20 minutes that they can just watch. They just talk. Because the bottom line is, what are their parents doing during that time before church? They're sitting, they're talking, they're hanging out. The kids can do that. They're fully capable. So they do that. And then the games that I do in the worship time, most of them are structured. And then let's say I finish at 11:45 and I'm like, whoa, I look out to the live feed and the pastor's still rolling and we're not even in the invitation, and I'm like, that means we got a good 15 minutes left, and so I'm like, well, and then we go to a game time, and that is usually games that I'm coming up with right off that, I've just done this a long time, and I start throwing games out, and we're doing games. Do they all necessarily have to have the thing? No. Sometimes it's Simon Says. Sometimes it's, I know 8 million games to get you through tons of time. And so after, if you take this, for those of you who came in late, this is like my contact information. Feel free to email me or call me anytime about anything. And if you're actually local-ish, I actually do like a meeting with local children's ministers. I try and do one each semester, and we just meet and pray and talk about stuff. But if you want to try and come down for that meeting, we usually do it lunch one day during the week here in the cafeteria. There's like a room in the back we get reserved. So if y'all ever want,
About the kids?
yeah, it's just it's all local children's ministers. Some of the guys from New Spring come. I come. We have probably about. It's not all Baptist either. There's Methodist. There's it's more than just that. It's anyone who works with kids that wants to come and just we pray for kids. We talk about different things we've done, and we talk about usually just one good topic that I kind of just get some information and give it to everybody on. So. It's just a good time. So, yeah, if y'all ever want to come back for that, I haven't scheduled the one for this semester yet, so I'll schedule it and let y'all know. Just send me an email or a text message, and I'll get y'all on board with that. Because honestly, like the most people that come love this because you get other ideas from other people, and that's why you're saying, "What is this? What is this?" That's where you get 3/4 of the things you're going to do, and there's no need in trying to kill yourself coming up with this is going to work because you know best what's going to work and not work at your church. So if you hear an idea, you could be like, "Evan, that will not work at our church. It's totally crazy, but it works at your church." But some of them you might go, "That would work at our church," and then you have a new idea.
And it's a ton of things we can do that is inexpensive.
Yeah.
It is.
Absolutely. It doesn't cost money to do everything. And the more you've been in a setting where you don't have that, the more ideas you generally have. And then you get in a setting. So I've been in both settings. And the setting I'm in now is I have a budget, and if I want to do something, I just say, let's do it, and we do it. And I'm not as creative as I used to be because I've been able to do that. But it used to be where no, if I wanted to do something, I had to figure out how am I going to do this? And so we did more things that really just didn't cost a lot of money.
My biggest thing is like getting across to new people in the ministry. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
You know? Like
Yeah.
I said, there's resources out there that we can use. We don't have to keep doing the same thing we've been doing, but we can get ideas from someone else of what they've been doing.
Right.
Make it work for us.
Right. And that's exactly right. And even in curriculum, the other has summer free. The one thing, if y'all don't use, or if you ever thought about doing kids worship, New Spring actually puts theirs all online for free, and you just download it. And that's actually what we use for kids worship. And so I've used lots of different things. Theirs is as good, if not better, than most. So if you go to New Spring Network, I'll write that up here .com. That's what you would just start an account, and then it doesn't cost anything, and then basically they have just resources, and on that, I'll go ahead and pull it up for y'all, but it's newspringnetwork.com. On that, they just have resources, and then you just go to them, and you can get to whatever you want. So it's one of the better ones I've seen that's free. And they have preschool and so when you get to this screen, basically you go to resources, kid series. So like right now we're doing this one right here, Ohana. And so you click this, and basically what it has in it is, so see this says like outlines and notes. That's the whole series, 8 weeks long. And weekly resources, so like the media is stuff if you're using a computer. It's got like the songs on there, all the drama on there. The large group document is like an outline of the worship service. But here's the thing, to do like this, you like really have to have like, you can do this with less people because it's video driven, so you could like do it on a computer, but you still need to have a few people in the room. Like the drama, you still need live actors. So now I have some other ones that I've used that I'd be willing to let some of y'all use that are like DVD, where you plug a DVD in and the drama's on the DVD. See, like, so if you say you wanted to do this but you didn't have a lot of things, if you do it that way, you don't have to have actors, you don't have to have this and that. It's all on the DVD, okay? Those usually are like $230 for 8 weeks worth of curriculum. Well, I have a lot that I've stored up over the years, so if you ever want to use that, just let me know and I can let y'all borrow those and start thinking about how you want to use those. And it's the same for preschool, but this is a great free resource. It's just newspringnetwork.com. You just sign in, create a password, go to the kids area, and make it happen.